The night exploded into chaos before I even had my boots on. A piercing alarm tore through the silence of my farmhouse, followed by the frantic bleating of goats racing around the barn like they'd seen the DVYL himself. I stumbled out of bed, heart pounding, and yanked open the window. There, atop my barn, a red light pulsed like a heartbeat, casting an eerie glow over the pasture. It wasn't mine. It didn't belong there. And yet, it was bolted to my roof, wired up with a satellite dish and a tangle of cables that screamed trouble. By the time I reached the yard, a van was peeling out down my gravel drive, its taillights vanishing into the dark. Whoever they were, they'd left behind a mess and a mystery that was about to turn my quiet life upside down. My name's Lucas Hargrove, and I run a small goat farm on the edge of Willow Creek, a sleepy town where the biggest scandal is usually who forgot to mow their lawn. I've got 12 dairy goats, a temperamental tractor, and a low tolerance for nonsense. That night, as I stood in the mud staring at the blinking intruder on my barn, I knew nonsense had found me. The goats were still spooked. Dolly, my lead doe, had rammed the feed bin so hard it dented, and the others were circling the yard, eyes wild. I grabbed a flashlight and climbed the ladder to get a closer look. The setup was professional: a solar panel, a dish the size of a truck tire, and that cursed red light, winking like it was mocking me. A sticker on the base read, "Property of Horizon Tech Solutions." I'd never heard of them, and I sure as hell hadn't given anyone permission to turn my barn into a science experiment. By sunrise, I was on the phone with my buddy Caleb, a tech whiz who'd once hacked his high school's grading system for kicks. He showed up an hour later, hauling a duffel bag full of gear and a grin that meant trouble. "Luke, you've got yourself a situation," he said, squinting at the rig. "This isn't just some Wi-Fi booster. It's a full-on signal relay, probably tied to a private network. Someone's using your barn as their personal cell tower." I felt my jaw tighten. "Who?" Caleb shrugged. "Let's find out." We started with the OBVYS, the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. The HOA had been a thorn in my side since I'd moved here 5 years ago, always nitpicking about my fence height or the unsightly goat pens. Their president, Deborah Langley Deb, to her friends, that woman, to me, was the kind of person who'd alphabetize her spice rack and fine you for parking crooked. I marched to her pristine colonial house, where she was watering her roses with a smugness that could curdle milk. "Morning, Lucas," she said, not looking up. "Heard you had some excitement last night." "Cut the act, Deb," I said. "What's that junk on my barn, and why wasn't I told?" She set down her watering can, her smile thin as a razor. "It's a temporary installation for community Wi-Fi. The HOA voted on it last month. Your barn was the highest point in the area, and, well, you don't use that roof for anything." I blinked, stunned by her gall. "My barn, my property. You don't get to decide what I use it for." She waved a manicure hand. "Page 203, Section 7B of the bylaws. We can utilize underused structures for communal benefit. It's all legal, Lucas. You'll get used to it." I didn't get used to it. I got mad. Deb's temporary rig came with a 10-year contract buried in fine print, and the red light was DRIVYing my goat's nuts. Dolly had taken to head-butting the barn door, and little Mabel, my smallest kid, wouldn't eat. Worse, the tech crew who'd installed it had vanished faster than a fox in a hen house when I tried to question them. Caleb, though, was already scheming. "We don't fight this with lawyers," he said, cracking his knuckles over his laptop. "We fight it with code." Over the next 3 days, we turned my barn into a battlefield. Caleb rerouted the HOA's shiny new signal through my existing goat cams here. I've got cameras to keep an eye on the herd because goats are chaos incarnate. We encrypted the feed, slapped on a paywall, and linked it to a custom app Caleb whipped up in a caffeine-fueled frenzy. By nightfall, every byte of Wi-Fi flowing through Deb's antenna was passing through GoatStream, a 24/7 broadcast of Dolly chewing hay, Mabel napping, and the rest of the crew causing general mayhem. If the HOA wanted their precious internet, they'd have to go through my goats first. The genius of it hit when Deb sent out an email blast praising the blazing fast community network. She had no idea it was powered by my Barna that I'd sent her an invoice for due lot $2,500 labeled bandwidth and barn rental. She didn't pay, of course. Instead, the HOA's office went dark. Caleb had built a kill switch into the system. No payment, no signal. Smart locks froze, thermostats glitched, and Deb's teenage son couldn't stream his gaming sessions. I sat on my porch with a cold beer, watching the chaos unfold across the street. By noon the next day, Deb was at my gate, clutching her clipboard like a shield. "This is extortion," she hissed. I leaned back in my chair. "No, Deb, it's business. You put a tower on my roof without asking. I'm charging for the PRIVY leg." She stormed off, but the game was on. Deb wasn't one to back down. She was more like a wasp, all sting and no quit. 2 days later, I got a letter citing obstruction of communal utilities and threatening fines. Caleb laughed so hard he choked on his coffee. "She's quoting a template she probably found online," he said. "Let's up the ante." We added a premium tier to GoatStream. Pay an extra, do law $99 a month, or every 10 minutes. The feed cut to a close-up of Dolly staring into the camera, bleeding like she was auditioning for a horror movie. The HOA board's next Zoom meeting was a disaster. Half the members couldn't stop laughing, and Deb's voice cracked as she tried to shout over the goat chorus. But Deb wasn't done. She hired a lawyer, some slick guy named Victor, who rolled up in a BMW and handed me a cease and desist letter thick enough to choke a horse. "You're interfering with critical infrastructure," he said, adjusting his tie. I pointed to the barn. "That's my infrastructure you're piggybacking on. Take it down or pay up." Victor didn't flinch, but he didn't stick around either, not after Mabel took a shine to his shiny loafers and tried to nibble them off. That night, Caleb caught a signal spike. Someone was jamming our feed with a cheap drone-mounted blocker, buzzing just out of reach. I didn't need to guess who. The drone didn't last long. Dolly, bless her ornery heart, spotted it hovering too low and launched herself like a furry missile. It crashed into the pasture, sparking and smoking, and we pulled the footage from the goat cams. Crystal clear proof of sabotage. Caleb uploaded it to GoatStream's new security highlights reel, and by morning, it had 20,000 VYUs. Deb's next move was a county inspector, a dour guy named Harold who looked like he'd been born frowning. He poked around the barn, muttering about zoning violations, but Caleb had already filed every permit under Hargrove Digital Agri-Sare VYSAS. Harold left empty-handed, but not before warning me to watch my step. I wasn't watching my step, I was sprinting. Caleb and I upgraded the system. Better locks, sharper cameras, even a harness for Dolly with a tiny body cam we dubbed Goat Cop. She strutted around like she owned the place, and honestly, she kind of did. The HOA's reliance on GoatStream was now total. Deb couldn't send an email or sync her smart fridge without my goat's approval. We saved our best trick for her emergency board meeting. 15 minutes in, the feed cut to a montage of Mabel climbing the tractor, set to a glitchy remix of Deb's voice droning about community standards. One board member, a guy named Tom who'd always been decent, texted me mid-meeting, "Your EVYL." I love it. Deb's next call wasn't angry, it was cold. "What do you want, Lucas?" she asked, her voice tight. I didn't hesitate. "A contract. The HOA pays for GoatStream. No strings attached. You get clean Wi-Fi. I keep control." She hung up, but the first payment hit my account the next day. I thought that might be the end of it. I was wrong. A week of silence followed too quiet, like the hush before a storm. Caleb was crashing in my spare room, tweaking the network, when he noticed a glitch in the logs. Someone was siphoning signal from our antenna, bypassing the paywall. We climbed the barn at dawn and found it. A hidden repeater tucked under a fake panel, wired to send free Wi-Fi straight to Deb's house. She wasn't just fighting mesh, was stealing from me. Caleb hooped like he'd struck gold. "She built a pirate line off your goats," he crowed. We disconnected it, sent an invoice for unauthorized access, Dulaw 3,000, non-negotiable, and waited. Deb didn't pay. Instead, she escalated. At midnight, my phone lit up with alerts, motion sensors tripping around the barn. The goat cams caught two figures creeping through the shadows, one with a crowbar, the other with bolt cutters. Caleb grabbed a flashlight. I grabbed a pitchfork. We flipped on the sprinklers upgraded to blast the barn's perimeter, and the intruders went down in a soggy heap, cursing as Dolly and Mabel charged them. The flashlight caught their faces: Victor, the lawyer, and Deb's cousin Eddie, who'd once tried to sell me a used car with no engine. "You're done," I said, holding up my phone. The live feed was rolling, and 15,000 VYUers were watching Goat Cop, Night Patrol. They bolted, Leah VYing a trail of mud and dignity. The fallout was swift. I posted the footage, along with proof of Deb's repeater scam, to GoatStream's public archive. It went VY-ral, picked up by a local news crew who showed up to film me tossing hay while Dolly photobombed the shot. Caleb explained the tech with a puppet made from a sock, and Mabel got her own slow-motion montage. The story spread. Farmer fights HOA with goat-powered Wi-Fi. Deb sent a letter demanding we shut down GoatStream, pending an investigation. I sent back a reminder that her office's smart locks ran on my signal. She backed off. But Deb had one last card. A shiny new tower appeared outside the HOA office, its dish aimed at my barn like a cannon. Caleb ran diagnostics. It was a sloppy copy of our setup, unstable and overpowered. "If that thing fries," he warned, "it'll take out half the neighborhood's grid." That night it did. The tower glowed red, then popped like a firecracker. Lights went out, alarms wailed, and Deb's sprinklers turned her lawn into a swamp. I flipped on the goat cam and stared into the lens. "Deb," I said, "you tried." The next day, a letter, Aravedno pink ink, no threats. Just a request to license GoatStream as the HOA's official network. I signed it, sent back a login for Deb labeled guest_001, and watched the subscriptions roll in. Half the neighborhood joined up. The other half got a free trial with bonus goat blooper reels. Caleb built a second antenna, and we launched an app. Dolly's harness got an upgrade, complete with a tiny badge. Then Caleb found the final piece. Server logs showing Deb had greenlit the original installation through a shell company she owned, planning to skim profits from a private network. It was fraud, plain and simple. I passed it to Tom, who took it to the county. Deb resigned quietly, her MOVY-ing van denting her mailbox on the way out. That evening, I stood by the barn, watching the sunset paint the pasture gold. Caleb handed me a beer. "You ever think we'd build an empire out of goats?" he asked. I laughed. "Nope, but I knew one thing." "What's that?" I grinned, raising my bottle. "Mess with my herd, you get the horns and a bill." The red light on the barn blinked once, then went dark. It was mine now, just like the signal. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this VY Deo with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next VY Deo.